Jacey Duprie is a digital entrepreneur and the creator of Damsel In Dior. Her fashion and lifestyle brand, with a total monthly viewership exceeding 5 million, has been featured in Architectural Digest, Vogue, Vanity Fair, and E! News. Her brand new book, Liking Myself Back, explores Jacey's journey and struggles with deep insecurity and how embracing her imperfections led to happiness and fulfillment.
All right, JC, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you. It's
Aw,
been a pleasure to get to know you over the years, and just honestly, we were talking before the show just to see how much I've seen you change in the last 4 or 5 years. In my head, Damsel in Dior, you're like had all your fancy shoes and fancy bags, and I'm sitting over here in my surfer gear or the jeans I wore to the last party, and I'm like, is this even in fashion right now? I don't know. It's been really beautiful to watch you create this amazing wellness routine and really kind of ground yourself and root yourself in your home and in your routine and with your family. And I just can feel a totally different energy from you. And so I
thank
don't know,
you.
I'm really proud of you for kind of writing all about your life's trajectory and getting to a place where you're liking yourself back and you're building a life that you really truly want. And so I'm really proud of you. I'm really excited to lend this platform and to kind of
Gosh.
go back to the beginning with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's such a compliment, especially coming from you. I feel like we have known each other for so long. And that's just the nicest thing that you could ever say. Thank you.
Yeah.
I really
No,
appreciate that. I feel that. So it's nice. It's nice to know that other people have really witnessed that, and specifically with the energy and the just the overall just kind of from the outside looking in. It's nice to hear that someone kind of recognizes that, and someone that I know, obviously we've known each other for so long, but we're not checking in every day,
yeah.
so that's nice to hear.
Yeah, no, it's really been beautiful to see, especially because in this season of life, when you're a young new mom and you have June and she's a toddler, and I know we were talking before the show, she has a lot of boy energy, and I know what boy energy, wild boy energy feels like, and to create and carve out space for yourself and to have boundaries and to not be moving as fast as you previously were, that's when stuff starts to really come up. And so to have outlets of how are you going to work through those things, and to see you just to see a snippet of yoga on your Insta stories, or to see you make your morning smoothie, or being outside with June in a little creek or a lake where you in Texas, that kind of stuff. I just think I mean, I have full body chills, to be honest with you right now, because we can all get in the habit of just going and trying to push things to the side and not let them come up and not enjoy these moments. So it's really beautiful to see, because you could have a fast pace, private jet to fashion week kind of life if you wanted to still stay in that mode, and you're choosing not to. And I think that's really a choice. And so I kind of let's go back and I want to take me back to life, your life, JC's little girl life. How did you become a fashion blogger? From a small town in Texas, tell
Yeah.
me about your upbringing. Tell me about coming to LA. What did that all look like?
Well, it's interesting now to kind of look back and reflect on how I really truly got into the world of and my love of fashion. And honestly, it wasn't until going on book tour and really talking and talking and talking about the book. And I really haven't even spoken about this revelation that I've had recently, that I really realized that my love for fashion and playing dress up was truly a means for escape as a child. I grew up in a really small town. My dad's a cotton farmer. We literally had the dirt to play with, we would just go out and build mud castles. And that is truly when I feel the most grounded, is gardening at the beach, being outside, getting dirty, getting my hair messy. I do not genuinely at my core of core, I don't like doing my makeup. I don't like doing my hair. I don't even really care what people are wearing. It's just not when I meet someone, they'll be like, oh my God, my outfit, this, my outfit. I'm like, I honestly didn't even notice. I really don't care at the end of the day. What I do care about are the things that ground me, and family, and spending time with friends and loved ones, and getting outside and doing those things that, really make me tick. The playing dress up bit came a little bit later on in my childhood, when my dad started drinking pretty heavily. And without realizing it, my mom and I would take these shopping trips to kind of get out of the house. And it wasn't really let's go take a shopping trip to buy necessarily, like, so transactional. It was more just an escape, and we would just try clothes on. You know, we didn't have a ton of money, so we weren't like going out and just like buying new clothes. We were just really using it as a place to go and get out of the house. And I didn't really realize it at the time, but I was really developing this like codependency on fashion, sort of in a way. And this idea of like escaping through playing dress up. And so that carried me through, honestly, until I was married and long into my marriage, where I was still, you know, blogging and going on fashion week trips and travel, and dressing up. But really, I wasn't, on the inside, I didn't feel as though I was thriving, because I wasn't doing those things that really ground me and make me feel, at the end of the day, very genuinely happy and loved and secure. But I started my blog. I actually started it on my honeymoon, and I was just really geeking out to like coding and whatnot. This was 10 years ago. And I fully dedicated my like extracurricular time to blogging until it became this like full-time business. It just started to grow and grow. And then in the book, you'll read it eventually, like, everything just catches up to you, as you know, life does. And the ball started to drop in my marriage. I just was not really healing those past wounds that we're talking about with my dad, and other things that are also in the book as well. So we deal with that. And now here I am full circle. And it's funny because I feel like I'm back to like the little girl Jacey, it just kind of happened that way, luckily. So yeah, now I feel as though I'm kind of back to that farm girl Jacey.
It's interesting because I don't know if it's when we have kids or like the importance of realizing like, wow, we're like passing down
Yeah.
what we prioritize and what we care about to our children, how that can kind of like unearth some things in us. Can we talk a little bit about your dad? And obviously your mom's taking you off on these little fashion adventures just to escape. Did you recognize at that age that he was an alcoholic? Were there behaviors that made you feel unsafe? Or, what, did he ever stop drinking or
Yeah.
work with that?
He's been sober for 15 years. We have a wonderful relationship now. He's read my book like 10 times. He actually read it yesterday again. I was like, Dad, he's like, I read your book yesterday, as if he read it for the first time ever. I was like, yeah, you've read it like 10 times. Like, why did you read it again? He's like, well, I haven't read the hard copy. He's like, I read the advanced, the manuscript, the soft copy, paperback, this. He's like, but I never read the actual hard copy. I'm like, it's the same book. He's like, no, it feels different. Now he wants to listen to it on audio. He's so sweet and so supportive. And luckily, thankfully, he's been sober for 16 years this July. And to answer your question, yes, I was very, and earlier on in my childhood, he wasn't the heaviest drinker. It started to worsen as I approached like middle school, junior high school. And in junior high, I just noticed like tension in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom and I leaving, it wasn't quite like connecting the dots at that point. I wasn't quite connecting the dots, but then around, I want to say like my freshman year of high school, it was very out there in our home. It was discussed every single day. It was yelling, screaming matches in the kitchen, me begging him to stop drinking. You're an alcoholic. We would tell him that, it was very out there in the open. And yeah, it looked like constant chaos in the home. The energy in the house was so negative, and I couldn't really tap into that at the time. I just knew that it made me feel like kind of sick to my stomach, all the time. Because that type of energy is really hard to get out, unless you're bringing, I don't know, some positive light into the space. And none of us were feeling really positive at the time and airing it all out. And it was just every single day, like fighting. Or ignoring, there were moments where I would feel unsafe when things would happen, like the kitchen flooding or the lawnmower catching on fire. And by catching on fire, I mean my dad like fully torching the lawnmower on fire because he was annoyed with it and yelling at it. But I never felt unsafe around my dad. Like luckily he never got like physical with us. He was more so abusive with his words from time to time, but never physical harm to us. It was always like to the lawnmower,
Yeah.
the poor
Yeah.
lawnmower, but never with us.
Inanimate objects.
Yeah, exactly. In the kitchen.
Yeah.
But you know, that slowly, like when you see things like that happening at that age, as a young teenager, you slowly learn to put this like barrier up and this like thing, you know, this big wall up to protect yourself from those traumatic moments. And I didn't really realize it at the time. Like that was just slowly building up this like wall, this protective wall for me. And my coping mechanism was to be perfect so that it wouldn't give him an excuse to drink. And then B, kind of like run away and just escape from it all. I wouldn't run away and be destructive. I just like wanted to escape, but I also had this mixed emotion of also feeling homesick, because I was so like used to that environment. So the minute I would leave and be in like a normal environment, it didn't feel normal to me, which is why my marriage ended up struggling in the long run, because our attachment's very secure and he's very loving and not dramatic at all. And that felt very uncomfortable for me. It's like, what do you mean? You don't want to fight with me? Like, let's fight. And he just wouldn't fight. And so I kind of got freaked out and started to run straight into my work.
Right.
Yeah.
And so can we talk about meeting Grant and falling in love and that story before the destruction?
Yeah. The happy intro, the meet cute.
Yeah.
I was really not looking for anything serious. This is so cliche. I had some boyfriends in college, some serious relationships. In college, I had like two or three. I always had like a steady boyfriend, you know. I was always trying to find a steady relationship, but I was really bad at them. I would always choose people that weren't quite right, you know. I didn't really know what that looked like. My relationships before Grant were like a lot of fighting, a lot of jealousy. I was always so insecure, always thinking that they were gonna like go cheat on me. I couldn't get enough like attention from them, you know, and I was just always seeking that security that I just felt like I wasn't really getting. So I got out of my final like relationship and I was single for a little while. I was single for like, for me, this is a long time, for like 6 whole months.
Yeah.
And then I was out with Kat, actually, one of my friends, Kat Sadler, and we were out at a bar at Bar Marmont, and I like went to meet her. She was going on a date, and I went to meet her. Long story short, the guy she was meeting called Grant. He's like, you got to come out. There's another girl here. And so Grant walked in and I was like, I'm not looking to like meet people right now. I really was like trying to be on my own and like not get into another serious relationship. And then in walks Grant. He's tall and blonde and so cute, like super LA. And I was like, no. But I wasn't like immediately, it wasn't one of those like he walked in and the world stopped.
Yeah.
So I was like, it's going to be like, whatever, we'll just hang tonight, maybe tomorrow night. And like, it's fine. I'm going to stay single. But we started talking and talking and talking. And it felt like, he just felt like an old friend. Like, and we started laughing. Oh my God, Kelly, like Grant just gets me going just so quickly. And then they invited us on another double date and Kat's like, please come. Like, I need a wing woman. So I was like, all right, fine. Like he was cool and easy to talk to. So we went on another date. I'm not calling this a date, but it was really just felt like me going to be like supportive of Kat and her date. And again, like Kat's like making out in the corner and Grant and I were like kind of making fun of them. We're like, oh my God, like this is so uncomfortable. Cause like here we are just like the third wheel, but like let's hang out. So that happened like 3 times. And then finally Grant asked me on a one-on-one. We were out and he was again just like, we just taught, like I just was having conversations with him like I'd never had with anyone else, you know. And I just wanted to get to know him in a different way than I had ever like dated anyone else. With everyone else, it always felt like the physical attraction was always the first thing, and with Grant that came later. And when it came, it was just so much stronger. Like the connection was stronger than anything else I had ever had, but it was beautiful because that wasn't the first thing. You know what I mean? So it was like kind of rooted in this friendship first, which was so different for me. And it never, ever, ever has felt unstable. Like my relationship with Grant has always felt very, very safe. And for me, that was the first relationship I've really ever had in my life where I felt truly taken care of and safe and like I was home. And that's kind of how I knew that he was the one. And it was it was a slow build at first, but like 6 months in, it was just like, whoa, this is the real deal. And then we moved pretty quickly after that.
How long did you guys date before you got engaged and got married?
We moved in together about a little over a year. And then about a year and a half, we got engaged. And then we had a 2 year long engagement because I was like, okay, this is moving like a little fast. Like, let's
Yeah.
like pump the brakes. And I really wanted to enjoy our engagement too. And gosh, we were like just the puppies in love. It was really fun. And we've been together now for almost 14 years in September.
Wow, look at that. And so you had this whirlwind of a relationship, got engaged so quickly, enjoyed your engagement, go off on your honeymoon, and you start Damsel in Dior.
Yeah. Yeah. Little did Grant know that he was signing up for a life with a social media person. Cause at the time I was like working as a like a production assistant. I was not anywhere near this whole world. You know, I was in a totally different world. And so was Grant. You would Google his name and nothing would show. He wouldn't even have Facebook. He was like,
Wow.
did not exist on the internet. Poor guy.
He's catapulted
Uh,
into like social media influencer, Grant.
I know. Now he's like the blogger husband, bless his heart. I'm always like, I'm sorry. I know you didn't sign up for this. But yeah, I started the blog really honestly as a hobby. I started it when I was working at E! News, but when I was on my honeymoon, I was posting pictures of our trip. And like my mom and dad were looking at it because I wasn't really on social media at the time. I was just like posting pictures so that they could like follow us along. And one of the pictures got featured on WordPress. And so boom, I got like 3,000 views that day. And I was like, whoa, this is so cool. Like it's from a photo I took. It wasn't a picture of me. It was a picture of something else and like had nothing to do with me. And so I really liked that. I was like, this could be like my creative expression. And so I really thought I was going to be like a travel photographer, but here I am now taking mirror selfies every day.
Always looking so beautiful though.
Oh.
When you think about how your styles evolved from the beginning to now, has it changed or do you feel like you've stayed true to yourself?
I think it's changed a lot lately. Like I mean, I'm a mom now too, which I hate to even like put that stigma attached to like a mom that we like don't dress up because we do when we want to. Just
Yeah.
pick and choose when that time is, you know. Um, and I hate to say this, Kelly, but it's not that I just don't care about clothes and fashion because I like it and I know that I'm like good at doing this thing, but I just don't care the same way that I used to as much, you know. I just really don't. I mean, I think having a child does put things into perspective about what really does matter. And I'm like June the other day, like would not put on her ballet recital costume.
Yeah.
And I remember like my mom, when I was younger, she's like, well, you're gonna put it on, like whether you like it or not. And I'm like, you don't have to put it on. Like, if you don't like it, then don't put it on. Like, who cares? You know what I mean? I'm just like not gonna do that with her. She can
Yeah.
wear whatever she wants. There's definitely been days where I'm struggling to like get her in a cute dress for school. And I have to like stop and take a deep breath. And I'm like, you can wear whatever you want to wear. Like, I really don't. At the end of the day, it just does not matter. But in terms of like my own personal style, I mean, I still like to get dressed up from time to time, but I definitely don't dress up as much as I used to. I mean, I used to be traveling and going to more events and things like that. I also don't go to as many events as I used to because I'd rather be home. I'd say it's just much more laid back, yeah, than it used to be.
Well, when you were running around and living this fast-paced life, you were kind of staying busy in a time when your relationship was crumbling. And I wouldn't say that it was crumbling from Grant's side. He was
Yeah,
he was a strong, stable statue, just being like, okay, JC,
I'll be
let's
here when
get
you get
through
back.
this.
Very true. Yeah.
But but can we talk about what was going on? Because I think for a lot of us, whenever something is bad for us personally, we take it out on the closest people around us. And if you're used to chaos and you're used to turmoil and you're used to yelling and fighting and drama, like we can create that. Can we talk about what was going on in your business and your life and for you personally that you, not to say like you felt like blowing up your relationship, it just became a part of
Yeah,
your story?
I
Like
did.
how did that happen?
Yeah, I think, you know, it was like this slow train that just started going faster and faster and faster, and without me realizing it towards the end, yeah, it was about to completely derail. It was derailing. I think that the kind of pillars of like what got the relationship to that point consisted of a lot of different things all happening at once, right? I had this new business that I didn't even know how to run, with zero tools on how to like manage employees or do accounting and pay my taxes or like all of this stuff of just running a day-to-day business. So feeling a little out of control about that, and grasping ever so tightly to the reins of control, which I love being in control because it's like the only way I can feel safe with like what's going on with me. Um, Also zero therapy, zero fitness plan. I was a runner at the time, but I don't even really like running. I was just doing things like that I thought I should be doing. I had zero self-care plan in place, and I had done therapy in the past. I've always been in therapy, but at that time I wasn't. And I was just like, okay, like I got married, check. Like we have a house, check, check. And now I have this small business. And I didn't really like, I was like, now what? Like I just kind of sat there and I'm like, what do we do now? And when I started the business, things were good between Grant and I. This like weird resentment started to build between us. Like the more time and energy and effort I would put into like this blogging thing, and I would focus on that, the less I was putting into my relationship with Grant. And the more I would put into my business, the more successful it became. So it was like rewarding me, for doing that. And so it became this really dangerous cycle. And I would come home and I'm like, this is boring. Like we're just sitting on the couch. Like I want to go back to Paris Fashion Week and like get dressed up. And I was very self-centered and selfish, and did not know at the end of the day what it really meant to be in a healthy marriage. I mean, it was not modeled to me, or Grant really, even though he's way better at it than I am. It was not modeled to me, ever really. And so no, no one hands you a manual when you get married and is like, here's how to have a healthy relationship. I definitely yeah, was struggling for like I want to say for like 4 or 5 years, where I was just slowly building up this resentment, but really it wasn't resentment towards Grant. It was with me, because I knew I wasn't living my most authentic life, my most authentic private life, even though I was sharing my life with the world. It wasn't like what really makes me tick at the end of the day. But the things that really ground me and make me feel happy and complete were scary, for me during that time, because my biggest fear is someone leaving me feeling abandoned, like my dad left me feeling for all of those years. I would beg him, like, please, if you love me enough, you will stop drinking. And he didn't. So it was just like repeatedly, day after day after day, someone choosing a bottle over you. That's at least what it felt like. So having this marriage and Grant loving me, I was terrified of that happening again. Which sounds so simple, right? Because he's here and he's loving me. But, it was like this deep rooted trauma that I had yet to tend to. And I didn't really realize was still there until Grant and I's relationship started to kind of unravel.
Oh, yeah. So at the point where you, I guess the train did derail and you separated, what what was like the final straw, or what was the reasoning for you to say like, okay, like I need you to move out, or I
Yeah.
need space?
Um, our dog William passed away, and before kids, your dogs are kind of your babies. And so we that brought us together for like a few weeks. Where I was like, oh my God, like Grant is family, and we just lost this creature that we considered a child, and it was gut wrenching. It's in the book.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. But then it also, after a couple of months, I'd say like a month or 2 or 3, it kind of started to pull us apart too. Loss has an interesting way of doing that. It can bring people together, but it can also cause this weird divide. And we were like 7 years into our marriage at that point, I believe. And it was just like, what are we doing? Like, we don't have kids yet. I don't even know if I want them. Like it wasn't like a ball that dropped. It was just like this idea of separating entered the conversation. And once it was there, it was just like this ghost that kept haunting us. And it wasn't until we went to marriage therapy, like couples therapy a little bit later, where the therapist was like, you have to take that off the table. Like, if you even want a shot at this and making this work, like your relationship needs some work. But if you're sitting here all day and you're just talking about ending it, then how will you ever even have a shot at repairing it? You know? So we got this idea of like separating into our heads, which I'm sure I put it there. I was just like, let's just like live apart. We're basically doing that anyway. And like, just, I don't even want to look at this problem anymore. Let's just fix it by running away.
Yeah.
That's easier. And
Find me in
so
a dressing room, trying on clothes.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'll just go put a dress on and pretend like this doesn't happen. This isn't happening. And it was hard to take it off the table. And so, we started to walk down that road without really fully not realizing it, but also, what I wasn't even sure that that's what I really wanted. I didn't even know what I wanted at that time. I was very like totally lost at that time.
I feel like for a lot of people, and I mean, just even in my experience, when I think about when relationships feel unstable or like they're breaking down, a lot of it has to do with like finding everything that's going wrong in your life because you don't feel right inside.
Yeah.
And you're like, let's just like, everything's wrong because I don't feel right. And a lot of times it's like our own personal work and finding out like things that, and it's normal, right? I mean, like we learn from our parents how to behave. And I mean, like, I know that I handle problems with Chris a lot of the same ways I've seen my mom handle problems. And I'm like, how do I find the book or the therapist to come on a podcast and teach me how to talk to my humans, like my husband and my kids, like, just so you don't repeat those patterns. And it's like, I mean, our parents' generation didn't talk about like, how do we communicate?
No.
How do we like set boundaries? How do we like set check-ins so that we're like making sure we're good and like everyone's needs are met? Like, there just wasn't that. It was just like survival and like raising your kids. And like my parents were entrepreneurs too, like keeping your business afloat, and like all of that's a lot for people. And so, I mean, I commend you for going to therapy. I commend you for going to couples therapy and for realizing like it was stuff that you needed to work on too. So when did you realize, and how did you get through working on, for you, what was PTSD and micro traumas and things in your childhood that were coming up in your relationship?
Well, once Grant like moved out, and no one knew this. We didn't tell anyone. We didn't tell my parents. I think because like deep down, I was like, I didn't want to tell people because I didn't want it to be real, because I really didn't want it to happen. You know what I mean? I was like, I think that there was some level where I was like, I think we can still fix this thing.
I just wanted to fight for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly what I wanted, Kelly. I wanted a little bit of that fight still, but it was when we actually like physically went our separate ways that I mentally was able to be like, whoa, like, wait a minute, like, here's a person, like, if I were to literally like write down the perfect person for JC, like Grant is it. So like, what am I doing wrong here? This is all me, because he's not doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
He's not yelling at me. He's not even hating me for suggesting this idea. He's still loving me through this process of me telling him, I don't want to be with you anymore. Like, what is wrong with me? And so I found a new therapist actually at the time, and she was fantastic. I'm so thankful for her, because she wasn't like, yeah, you should stay with him, or yes, you shouldn't. She's like, let's explore both options, and we really walked through both, and we started there. That was like the first few sessions, but then it's like, okay, therapists, they want to dive deep into the background and the whole like backstory. And she did a lot of EMDR, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, which was huge for me, because I'd be like, I just feel like this way, like, Grant and I were talking about him coming with me to Paris and he wouldn't come. And I was so mad. And I'm like, why won't you come with me? And she's like, what's the first time you ever felt that way? And I'm like, well, and it's these past experiences. I learned really quickly, all of my past experiences were really controlling my behavior in present day. And I just did not have those tools. I had no idea that that was the case. And so we just started to do a really deep dive. And a couple months in, then Grant and I started couples therapy per my therapist's suggestion, of course. And like, we just hadn't been talking. Like we weren't, I don't, it's like, it's just such like a domino effect with marriage, right? Like you start doing things, you don't really realize you're doing them. And it's the smallest little things. Like our couples therapist was like, greetings are huge in relationships, like how you say hello and goodbye to one another. It's those small little daily things that seem so insignificant that are so significant over the course of years and years and years of doing them. So for years and years and years, Grant and I like weren't really talking and weren't really connecting on a day-to-day basis. And that just built up to this point where I've started resenting him. And now we know these things to look out for, and we're constantly working on our relationship. And God, he's in the next room probably listening to this. Now we're obsessed with each other too much. We talk all the time, and it's, yeah, I don't know. I knew I needed to like geek out to this and like really dive deep into this. Otherwise, like I was going to lose Grant, but I also felt like I was going to lose a piece of myself because he stands for everything that I really want, like the little girl in me wants, not like the traumatized teen.
Yeah. You aren't, I mean, it's like a soul connect. It's a really beautiful soul connection that's visible, like when he is present on your social media and we get glimpses of
Aw.
Grant, because it's really so obvious that he's rooted, that he's grounded in like the most important things in life. And like, that's you and June and like the life that you've created together. It's really beautiful. It's palpable from the outside.
So
And
nice.
and so it's really because a lot of times, I mean, you mentioned that you had exes that were like not your people, but maybe your teen version people, like the people that were going to give you that drama back, that were going to like fight, show you this love in a very like unhealthy way. And like the fact that you chose Grant as your person, that you came full circle to pick someone that was truly like little Jacey's perfect
Mhm.
match, not like, the tumultuous teen years or whatever it was, is really beautiful. And that you worked your way through it to really go back to your roots and to liking the little you, and like to bringing that into your life today and into June's life is really, really beautiful. Because so many times I think when we look at marriages that fail and the divorce rate being so high, I'm sure it's that maybe when that person is in that place in their life, they might not be
Yeah,
being the person that is true to who they are, who they really are authentically, because they're not in touch with that person.
absolutely. I completely agree with you. And honestly, I just got lucky because I had picked a lot of them, a lot of the just not the right fit. Amazing people, but yeah, I just got lucky because I just got lucky. Somebody's
Yeah.
looking after me.
I feel the same way. Like I definitely had looking back, had some relationships that I was like, whew, dodged a bullet. Like I
Yeah,
would, and being like that my parents have been married for so long, I probably would have been trying to be a loyalist and trying to like make it work and like not let it fail, and like would have
yeah,
lost myself in that process. And that is, I think, for every woman or man in a marriage, needs to kind of like look at the situation and say, is the person true to who I am? And Grant is definitely that person for you. So it's beautiful to see. And I'm sure really amazing that you've worked on it. And I think that's work. And like people need, even in the best situation where you're both are like, okay, I found the person that's true to me. And like the little girl in you and the little boy in him are actually
Mhm.
like perfectly matched. But how do you work on that? And so you mentioned greetings from your therapist. What other things have you guys done in your marriage to really hold the bonds and connections, and to identify things that maybe are keeping you guys from connecting, like bad habits?
Well, I'm going to talk about physical connection because it's important. We are very bad at like putting intimacy on the books, and it's hard with a 3.5-year-old. as I'm sure you can relate. So for us, that looks like genuine, like just scheduling it in, because we're both like, at the end of the day, we're best friends and we're roommates. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So what sets us apart as like a married couple? That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And so our couples therapist was like, you guys need to do this more. And we're both like, we love doing that. We love connecting. And it doesn't always have to be about sex. I don't know if we can like talk about this on your podcast. I never
Yeah,
know.
you can. You can.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I never know, like, what's PC on what podcasts, but that is like that at the end of the day, that really is what connects your husband and wife, otherwise you're just my buddy that I live with and we raised, you're my partner, but like, that's what like the intimate connection stems from. So we have been working since we've been back together at connecting, and not just with like sex, but like making out and just finding little time where we can, like when June goes to school in the morning, it's not always like this big date night, it looks totally different now. We try to like, we don't like schedule it like on our calendar, but
You're like, here's an invitation for sex on Sunday at 4 p.m.
I mean, we've done that, but like,
Yeah.
we definitely will do that from time to time. We'll like come up with a cuter like thing. Like we do Freaky Fridays. So like we know like Fridays are like a freaky day, but we don't like pencil it in, and it doesn't always happen, but we do try to like I'm just more aware of that, we're not neglecting that part of our relationship because it is so important. The greetings are important. How we talk to each other in front of June, we're very, very careful about that. And not just how we talk to one another, but what we're talking about. We are off limits in this house about talking about, there's like certain things with every relationship, but for us, this is what works. Talking about our parents in front of June, we do not talk poorly about our parents in front of her. It's just like a house rule. That's just our thing. Little things like
Love
that.
that. That's really
Yeah. And like, I'm trying to think what else. We also take like work conversation off the table at night. So like once like 5 or 6 o'clock comes around, like no more work. It's unless it's like something we both like really want to talk about, and we're like into it, but really we limit ourselves. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think honestly, we just are constantly communicating with one another on a day-to-day basis. And it's like, I just don't know how we could go back to having it any other way at this point. It's just so crazy to like think back, you know, pre children too, because the communication really is like, it's everything.
It is,
Yeah.
especially when you bring children into the fold, because it's a layer of like, who's going to take care of June and who's responsible for this and that. And then all of a sudden parenting, you like have so many different opinions because you were parented different
Yeah.
ways, and how you want to raise your child together may be different, and their
Yeah.
expectations. And there's so many layers once you add that element.
I think too, like, I have to really practice this. But the more I do it, the more I see the reward to doing it. And it's when I really try to practice not assuming that I know Grant. Like of course, I know him like the back of my hand. I've known him for 13 years. But I really try my best to practice not assuming that he's going to have the reaction I think he's going to have in every scenario, or the answer to a question. Like, it was funny the other day, we were like ordering a pizza. Grant gets his like cheeseless pizzas. And I'm like, you want olives, tomatoes? Like, what all do you want on it? He's like, olives. Like, ew, I don't like olives. I was like, you don't like olives? I didn't know that. I've known him for 13 years and I had no idea the guy didn't like olives. And it was just this reminder, like, I don't know everything about him, and sometimes I'll ask him a question that I've asked him 100 times and his answer will be different, because we're growing and we're evolving and we're changing. And 3 months ago, my answer to do I want olives on the pizza could be completely different than it is today. And I think it's important to keep an open mind in your relationship with your partner, because I really believe that that's where relationships start to feel a little like sticky, is when you just assume, or you're like, ugh, like, of course you're going to do this, or he always does that. Like Grant always, he never puts the seat back in my car the way it's supposed to be. And it annoys me. Like it's these small little things that like start to just, and it's everything, But if I explain to him, like, calmly, like, this is why this is frustrating for me. It like gets me going because of whatever. It slows me down in the morning because I have to put my seat back. It's like these stupid little things that all add up. But I think if you take your time and you really listen to one another and you're open to the change in the relationship, then you can continue to evolve together. And then one person won't be evolving over here while the other one's evolving over here. I think that that's so important, just to be open to the answers, and the change.
Yeah, I think you've demonstrated how like being curious about yourself, I mean, just in reading your book, about being curious about yourself and the whys and like uncovering those, and then also being curious about your partner makes it a completely different experience in your relationship, in the way that you communicate and like how you take care of each other and yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if there's a problem with a day, I immediately take accountability for that. And I think if both partners do that, it's a win, no matter what it is, no matter if it's 100% Grant's fault. And it usually is. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally joking. But I think if you immediately take like the blame or the accountability for what you're doing to contribute to the tension or the problem or even the joy,
Yeah.
then it's a win-win for everyone, because pointing the finger it's not going to get anyone anywhere. And that goes for anything. It's not just with relationships with your spouse, it's with relationships with your family and your children and everyone. I think like, what can I do, to be a better version of myself to help this relationship succeed? And if you're doing that at the end of the day, then if you could walk away, if you want to, at least you gave it 100% and that you gave it all that you could possibly give, and that you're not just like pointing the finger at the other person for being wrong,
Right. It's really, I think, important and a hard practice to get in the habit
Yeah.
of doing, but takes time and effort, and also like cultivating that time for yourself to be able to be introspective. And I
Yeah.
think that's what I mean, like in watching your journey, what's become really so poignant in your life is like having that time for introspective, having that self-care, having those routines and rituals that have helped you stabilize and be like, everyone's always like, take a breath or take a beat before you respond to something, or think about it. And so many of us don't have the time to think about things before we react and respond. And maybe we are responding in a way that is like ingrained in us from childhood or a trauma response. So let's talk about your self-care and those rituals that you created and how you built this time to like yourself back and what that looks like for you.
Well, it really, really, really does take practice. In the beginning, I would just have that reaction, and I think in the very early parts of me kind of setting out on this journey, it looked a lot like this. It looked a lot like react, and then I'd be like, I just reacted. Why? Like, like you got to start small, and if you can just at the very first acknowledge that you're reacting, like you're on the course, you're on the right path, because that's hard to do. And even if it's an hour later and you're like, whoa, I really blew up today, I think it's a matter of like sitting with that and looking at why, looking at what caused that reaction, what was leading up to it. There's so many things that can really set a person off without you really realizing that that's what's happening. It could be the smallest little thing, like a mosquito circling your head and somebody's asking you a question. You're like, ugh, I think it's the mosquito. It's not the question,
Yeah.
It could be the smallest little thing. So I think for me in the beginning, it was just a matter of being aware and then taking note. And then once I was able to do that, that time became shorter and shorter, and to where it almost overlapped. Like I would realize I was doing it like in the moment. And then I was like, okay. And then I could slowly shift it into being more aware before the moment would happen, because I was becoming just more, mindful and with every moment. And the more mindful you are, the more aware you are, and you can start to catch those little moments where you do need to take a breath. The breathing for me started about a year and a half ago when I started yoga, which is a total game changer. I do yoga probably like 4 or 5 times a week. And I said I do yoga 4 or 5 times a week, but I'm always doing it now because it's just a part of what I do, like literally all day, every day. Like stopping and taking that breath. People would say that to me and I'm like, I'm breathing. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm breathing. Okay. Now what? But
Yeah.
now it's like, it really is like this moment where I just can completely hit reset. And the moment's usually happening before that triggering, reaction, the email, the phone call, the comment. Um, and it just kind of gives me this like little slice of zen where I can have some perspective and really formulate the way I want to react versus just this hardwired thing that I don't have control over. And for me, a control freak, I love it because I can totally geek out to like, oh, I can do this thing and it's healthy, and it's helpful and it's fantastic. And so I have found little ways to kind of carve those moments out throughout my day that don't necessarily involve, 90 minutes in the hot room at Urban Yoga, but I create these little moments of breath and mindfulness when I'm making my Kelly smoothies every day, which I do every morning. And when I'm not making them, my day feels off. Like I can truly tap into like the difference in my entire day based off of my morning routine. It's phenomenal because I'll wake up. Grant brings me coffee in bed every morning, bless his heart. He gets June going, and then they come in and we cuddle, which just fills my cup up. But if I don't get that, it's like, oh, like negative check, or positive check. And that's why like last week on my book tour, I just kind of unraveled because I didn't have all those things that like fill up my morning cup. And those are little moments for me that really like set the tone for the rest of the day. And then I also, I look at my calendar a lot lately. That's my new thing, is really studying the way that I'm spending my time throughout the week and being very, very mindful of the things that I'm committing to doing with work. As we come out of this pandemic, it feels like we're truly coming out this year with a vengeance. I feel like people are back like fully right now, and they're like overly committing and overly working themselves to like make up for lost time or something. And I myself have tried to catch myself. I'm catching myself doing the same thing.
Mm.
So for every like 10 things that I have on the calendar, I'll take 3 off.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'm starting to say no more because, you start to get back on that hamster wheel again. And without realizing it, you're like, my whole week is slammed and I have something every night and I'm not home for dinner. And I don't like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's just about being very careful with, your schedule as well.
Yeah. Having those priorities and knowing what made you feel the best version of you. And I think that that's great advice for people because it's definitely what I'm seeing, like the invites for events and things, and they're all coming in and you're like, wow, well, I haven't gone to one of these in a really long time. So I'm going to start saying yes to this. And then exactly what you're saying, like you're just, what are your true priorities? And if it is your morning routine and your yoga practice and having coffee in bed with your family, like it's almost like that just needs to be a block on your calendar that everyone knows, like this is a non-negotiable for me because this is my priority. And
it definitely is, like it is on there and it's not going anywhere. And also if I'm taking time away from my family to do yoga, which is a sacrifice,
yeah,
I want the thing that I'm taking time away from my family for, I want it to be filling my cup up, right? I want it to be like a yoga where I can walk away a better version of myself. If I'm going to an event and I'm sitting there like wishing I were home, I shouldn't be at that event, I hate that. I mean, I feel like you can totally probably relate to this. There's nothing worse than signing up for something and then you go to do it and you're like regretting that you're spending time away from your kids for that thing. It's, which, I always regret spending time away from my kids, but it's like, if it's for something that's going to make me a better version of myself, like yoga or, work, we have to do work. But if it's providing for her, like a better mother, a better person, then it's a win for everyone, even if that means time away from her. But if it's something that's kind of draining me and, not the best feeling in the world, I'm like, what am I doing here? And in that moment, I like hate myself for it.
right.
So I try to not put myself in those positions as much as I can.
I think it's like a process too, right? You're like, you're really good at having boundaries and being like, okay, I'm in alignment with what I'm saying yes to. And then all of a sudden things get rolling and you're like, oh, that didn't feel good. And it's like anything. It's like, oh, I'm in this habit of like eating a certain way and moving my body. And then you like have a weekend where you're like, what just happened? I definitely want to go back to that. And I think people feel like it should just be perfect and you should just like learn it and be good at it forever. But
Yeah, it's not like that.
it's those moments where you're like, gut check, I need to change a little bit, or I need to refocus. And I always say, like, the clients that I think do the best job, it's not that they're always perfect or that they have it right all the time. It's that they're really good at recommitting, and they
Mhm.
don't see like these little hiccups that reinvigorate them and remotivate them to start again as a problem. They see them as
Yeah.
just kind of like a North Star to like set them back and get them excited about it again, because we always need that like to be remotivated and excited and passionate about stuff. So it's good. It's really good.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way. Like, I don't see it as a failure when I haven't done yoga for a week last week because I was traveling, and I could have easily done it like when I was traveling, but I didn't. I was eating like crap, like so bad, pizza and pasta. But I just see it as it is what it was, just a week,
Yeah.
And I used to very much feel as though it was like this yin yang thing, like this zigzag, like I'm either on my diet and I'm on my fitness kick and I'm being mindful and writing in my journal every day, or I'm not. But now it's just like life is fluid. It is what it is. I'm just not so hard on myself about it. And like you said, it is kind of this North Star, like, okay, well, I know what I need to do if I want to feel my best. So I'm either choosing to do that or I'm not. Like, it is what it is.
Exactly. Well, I just have like one or two more questions and we'll close it up. This has been like an amazing conversation, JC. It's so fun to see like just it's just a beautiful transformation, and just coming back to yourself really, and showing people how to do that is key really in a book like this. So um let's talk about boundaries. You talked about boundaries with your calendar. You had some boundaries around like what was really going on in your life with your marriage and then with your pregnancy with June. I'd love to know, like, I mean, you keep things pretty private. I think people think your whole life is online, but when you're going through like real things, really hard things, you kept them to yourself. Can we talk about like your boundaries in regards to social media and what was like really going on when you were pregnant with June?
Yeah, oh my God, I had a really tough time being pregnant. And at the time, I think I was still learning like how to have those boundaries. I've always had a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that I'm not sharing on social media, right? But that boundary was a learned thing. Like, just like dealing with hate comments is a learned thing. Like, you don't just like know how to put that wall
Not
up.
respond.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't know how to just ignore it, and you want to respond, but you shouldn't, and you can't. And like, it hurts at first, but once you see it so many times, you start to become a little numbed out to it, and then you learn to just not let it affect you. Same thing goes for like the boundaries of what I'm sharing and not sharing. And at first I'm probably sharing too much, and then I go to one extreme where I'm not sharing enough. You're just kind of like learning as you go. With the pregnancy, I was just struggling. I didn't want to be the person that complained about her pregnancy on social media. But on
Mhm.
the flip side of the coin, my sister-in-law even was like, why didn't you share it at the time that you were going through a hard time? Like, you're lying just like everybody else. I was like, no, 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 no. Like, I'm not lying. I just didn't want to be that girl that was complaining, because I know there's a plethora of women that would love to be pregnant, regardless of how hard it was for me, that can't. And I would hate to be that person, like showing up on their feet every day. Also, like, who wants to listen to someone complaining about being pregnant? Like, people don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
And I had always intended to share the truth of what I was experiencing after the fact. So I always had that in my mind, right? I was always like, one day I will open up about this struggle, but I don't need to do so in real time because I'm actually processing it right now, and I need time to fully process it. Plus, even my own mother was like, why didn't you tell me? I also, there were times where I was like, maybe this is normal. And I'm just having a hard, it's just me. Um, I didn't know that you weren't supposed to gain 60 pounds when you're pregnant. I was like, I'm just gaining more weight than most people. I don't know. I just was kind of going through it. And I didn't really want to share it because it wasn't like the most beautiful thing in the world at the time. It didn't feel that way during the time. And so, yeah, I was pretty guarded. I didn't open up about our pregnancy until I was like 5.5 months pregnant. We announced it finally on social, but I felt as though I had to because I was going to Fashion Week and I was pregnant. I couldn't lie anymore or hide it. But it was also fun at times too, because it was kind of this like thing that Grant and I had that no one could touch, it was like our little secret, which was really nice and like bonding for us. And I was protective too, in a weird way, over my unborn daughter. I like wanted to shield her from this whole world, both online and off, just the world in general, protect her from it all. But yeah, it was a rocky road. And working in fashion and being pregnant is hard. It's really hard. And our work, like the deals that came in, decreased significantly after I announced that we were pregnant. And once I had June, I mean, I think we took a hit. Grant like figured it out. It was like we lost at least like half of our income that year. And like there's no maternity leave, there's no like plan in place for bloggers that are pregnant. So we just kind of had to suck it up and get through it, which sucked. But here we are, or on the other side, it's fine. It all turned out fine. But yeah, during the time it was a struggle.
Well, it makes you get creative about like how you want to grow your business and how you want to change and what the future looks like, I think.
Mhm.
So for you personally, like what in the last few years, like when you think about the growth of your business and what you want to be doing, and you're constantly evolving. I mean, I've seen you evolve so drastically in the last 5 years. So what do you think? What do you think the future has? And for
Yeah,
you?
the beauty of this all and the funny thing, and of course this is happening. I was so like nervous at the time that we were like lose all of our work and no one was ever going to want to work with us again. And I was so like worked up in that, like, why is this happening to me instead of for me? That
Yeah.
I didn't see the silver lining of what was unfolding before our eyes. And that was, we did this pop-up store um the winter after we had June. We had June in February, and come like October, November, we opened up this pop-up because like you said, we had to kind of pivot and get creative. And I'm like, I need to let people know I still work in this industry. I love brick and mortar stores. I used to work in my aunt's boutique in Chicago. So we opened up this pop-up at Platform in Culver City. It was just like a 3-month long thing just to share and sell products that with businesses, like local businesses and designers and things like that. So I just curated it. It was really like truly a passion project. This was not like a big money maker, but we just did it because we wanted to do something, to shake things up a bit. And long story short, our business like at least doubled after that. And not just because of that. It wasn't about the pop-up. I think it was just about Grant and I like truly settling into like posting and working less. It was like like what is the term, like quality versus quantity. I was so consumed with like I have to be posting every single day, I have to be online, otherwise like they're just going to go away, like all this is going to go away. And I learned really quickly after having June, like I can't do that because I can't physically do that. And I was kind of beaten into submission, but like they didn't go away, they're still here, people are still following us. It kind of like beat me into this like just relax a little bit. And once I did that, we grew. It was crazy because I was so scared to do that. I was so scared to let my foot off the pedal and fear that we would lose everything that I'd worked for so long. But once I did that, it almost like gave it some room to breathe and grow. And it was amazing. I was like, oh my God, so you mean I didn't have to be doing all that stuff before? I was like, I was really like running myself into the ground. And I just learned like it's okay if everything is not perfect. And once I was personally going through that, I think maybe the followers could see that too. And they were like, she's softening. And it was more appealing probably to watch, from the sidelines, perhaps. I'm not sure, but our business doubled. And now we're opening a permanent brand in the fall. And so we're really pivoting. I know, I'm so excited about that. So I'm designing a collection and we're launching a store in the fall that'll be a permanent space and e-commerce. So now I just feel like we're just doing things more that pull at our heart, that we are like genuinely interested in, and worrying less about that hamster wheel that we like thought we needed to stay on. But June really did, like, she was the kickoff to that, because she physically, mentally, and emotionally beat me in the most wonderful and beautiful way, beat me into submission, and was like, what do you like? You can't fake it anymore. Like you just can't get away with this anymore. And like I thought I knew that, but like, and it's great. I just feel like, the best version of myself, even on the days where I feel the most exhausted and she's not letting me sleep, it's still like those are the best days, because it's authentic.
It is. And you know what? I think you make a really important point that as entrepreneurs, you feel like if you're not working, if you're not going, if you're not producing, if you're not, you know, doing whatever it is on your to-do list, that it's all going to fall apart. And there's this like, you are your foundation, you are the security and for your family. And so it's like this pressure that without practice and realizing like you can breathe, you don't feel like you can slow down. And so, I mean, what a silver lining from the pandemic and after June's birth, and like having your business drop through pregnancy, to say like, oh, wow, like I can take a breath physically, my business can take a breath, my family can have room to breathe, and my world isn't going to fall apart. Like, it's really amazing that you were able to experience that and see that, because that breathing room gave you the ability to have this inspiration, to get creative, to create the
Yes.
brand, to have this brick and mortar store launching in the fall. Like, we don't have that. We don't have time to get creative when we don't breathe.
You're absolutely right. And there's no space. There's no space. I'm a firm believer in that. Like, somebody recently asked me, like, what's the number one thing, like fashion tip or something that you could tell people? And I'm like, make some space in your closet and in your wallet for new money and like fashion and things to come in, like your home, your pantry, whatever it is, wherever you want new ideas or new energy to be coming into your life, you have to create space for it. Like a cluttered closet is a cluttered mind, or a cluttered fridge in your case. It's like you have to have some space in any area. The car, I just am like a firm believer in like keeping things very clean and open and letting some air come in, because like you said, without that, mentally, and it just wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened. I was on that, like on that hamster wheel, just go, 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 go. So
And
I
now you're
really
just on
try
your
to
yoga mat.
yeah, no. From the hamster wheel to the yoga mat. Oh, the times have changed.
Oh my gosh.
Funny.
Well, let's end this podcast with a question I've asked a couple of guests, and that is, um, what does body love mean to you?
I think it means, wow, that's such a great question. It's so many things. I feel like I have a long-winded answer for that. I think it means not stepping on a scale. I think it means feeding your body what it craves and what it wants, and listening to those cravings and understanding them. I think it means doing the things that really make you light up from the inside out. Well, whether it's like gardening or yoga for me, or hugging your family and friends. I don't think it means anything having to do with like working out or even necessarily like dieting or anything like that. I think it just means really taking care and loving your body for what it's doing for you every single day. It's working for you every day. So I think it just means loving it.
Oh, that was a
I don't know.
that was a really beautiful
I feel like I was
answer.
all over the place.
No, because that's exactly, I think that it, like, you're giving me grandma energy in like a good way, meaning like a fully lived life. Like, what would your grandma tell you? Like, what does it all mean and what's most important? And like, you're tapping into that. And whether it was like all of the trauma in your childhood, the separation from Grant, the hard pregnancy, like, and then kind of just like hitting that head on and working through it. Like, It's wise. It's why it's a really
Aw.
wise answer, and in the best possible way, because you're living in the present moment and making those choices every single day to create the life that you're living. And that is, um, you're in the place of power, and your hands are on the steering wheel, and it's very apparent. And I think that you've infused that into the book, that everyone has the ability to be in the driver's seat. And I just want to thank you for writing such a beautiful memoir and sharing your story. Thank you for,
Thank you.
putting out this effort. I'm so excited for your brick and mortar. You guys, Jacey's new book, Liking Myself Back, an influencer's journey from self-doubt to self-acceptance, launched last week. Go get your hands on it. She hit #1 on the charts. It's amazing. Where can people follow along, Jacey, with your journey and with when the store is opening and all of your
Well,
guys' teachings?
I'm always on Instagram. I'll be on Instagram probably till I have a cane in my hand. So you can find me there at Jacey Duprie. I'll be sharing it all until I don't know when. We'll see.
All right, you guys, I'll put links to Jacey's new book and her Instagram in the show notes. Jacey, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.